Hey, Rob here, and this episode of the Crooked Table Podcast is sponsored by Audible. Of course, this year we're journeying through the wizarding world of Harry Potter, and one of the very best ways to experience the book series is through the incredible audiobooks performed by Jim Dale. Audible has the entire series and so much more just waiting for you. To check out thousands of audiobooks, podcasts, and other spoken word entertainment, start your free 30-day trial today over at audibletrial.com/crooked table. That's audibletrial.com/crooked table. Now, on with the show.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast, where we discuss the world of film from a fresh angle. And now your host, Robert Yaniz Jr.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast. This is Rob. On this show, we democratize the film criticism conversation by bringing on fans and critics alike, blah, blah, blah. But normally, that's what we do. This week, Kai's trying to distract me. This week, we are continuing our very ill-timed Harry Potter series, talking about Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. And I'm so glad that both 2020 and our Harry Potter series are getting closer to ending, because I couldn't have picked a worse year to delve into the works of She Who Must Not Be Named. But thankfully, I am here with a guest who we can name, who's been on the show many times before, my wife, Yaniz. Welcome to the show again.
Hi, everybody in podcast land. Thank you, Rob, for having me on the show.
You're always so formal when I do this.
Well, I work in financial services.
That's true.
I work like in an office environment, so it's just...
Not for the last 6-7 months you haven't worked in an office environment.
That's true. That's true. But it's still financial services, so
True.
I gotta be I actually even had somebody I used to work with that even was like, you used to work at a bank or something? And I'm like, yeah, she's like, I could tell. And this is when I was working at a recruiting place.
Because you have bank voice.
Yeah.
So then, is that the implication that the person was asking?
No, I think what she was saying was I like the way that I walk and present myself. It's, I guess,
Banky?
Yeah, I'm a banky
Okay.
type person. But yeah, so thanks for having me on the show yet again. And I actually opted in for this episode a year ago, I think.
Well, obviously, Kai hears about my plans for the podcast before anyone hears about my plans for the podcast.
And I may be the one that sometimes incepts Rob with ideas for the podcast.
Did you incept the idea to do the Harry Potter series?
I feel like I did.
I don't remember how that happened, but it was a logical follow-up to Star Wars because, again, Harry Potter is kind of the Star Wars for this current generation.
And 8 movies.
Yeah, and 8 movies, which is the perfect number. I revealed during an Instagram Live video that I posted, I guess, last week or something like that, as of this recording, that we're doing the Rocky franchise next time. So we want to take a little bit of a break from the fantasy sci-fi stuff, so that should be interesting. But Kai, did you volunteer to do one of these, or did I say, which one do you want? You're doing one of these. What was the dynamic
It was
there?
a little bit of both. You asked me gently if I would participate, and I'm like, yeah, I'll participate. And at the time, when I said I was going to do it with you, do one of these episodes, I'd only seen the movies 5 years before. I think what I recollect is that Rob and I saw the Harry Potter series together
2011, 2012 or something?
2014, I think.
Was it that way?
Yeah, it was. I think it was soon after we got married, and I hadn't yet even read the books. So when I read the books from,
you put a lot of emphasis on the books.
When I read the books, from the months of August to October 2019, while I was reading Half-Blood Prince, that's when I said to Rob, I'm like,
I want to do this one.
That's the one I want to do. Yeah. So, and I hadn't even read Deathly Hallows yet, obviously. So, and I, stayed true to form this whole
I think
time.
it was maybe you reading the books so late, like 15 years after the rest of the world, that I think maybe that's what made me think, yeah, Harry Potter, I should do those. Maybe that was part of the inspiration for why I picked this.
I mean, who even knows, Like, we have all these conversations, and it's hard to, like...
And we don't
really
record all
remember.
of them, shockingly. I'm always telling you we should do another podcast, or you should do your own, or because I think our conversations are interesting, and I'm making these mostly to entertain myself, I guess. And hopefully some people come along for the ride. But so having seen the movie, because you had a different experience... or you can bring a different perspective now to this movie, because most of the people that have been on this series read the books a long time ago and then watched the movies as they came out, or have only seen the movies or something, like some variation on that. But you saw the movies, then read the books, then have been rewatching most of the movies with me. What is it? How generally... What are your thoughts on the Harry Potter franchise, books and movies, and how do they compare? And then, we'll kind of do the general stuff before we get into Half-Blood Prince proper.
Well, first off, I'm very fortunate that I read the series when I did, because you have the group of readers that were reading the books while they were waiting for the next books to come out. You had the people, like you said, that read all the books and then were waiting impatiently for the next movie to come out. And then I'm in the group where all the books are already written and all the moves are already done, already made. So I didn't have to wait. I just went right through them, and I was able to do that basically for free, because I did a Kindle Unlimited subscription for a month, so I could end up downloading all of the Harry Potter books. I read them digitally. So I just kind of just read them back to back to back. And I recall that Half-Blood Prince was one of the longer ones, if I'm not mistaken. But I do feel like the books are better than the movies. I think I remember watching some of Princess of Azkaban with you.
Prisoners. Said Princess of Azkaban. I'm like,
I thought it said a prison.
Who is the?
I was wrong in some way.
Who is the Princess of Azkaban in your mind? Is that Sirius Black?
No, Bellatrix.
Bellatrix. Okay, fair enough. She's not in that one, but okay.
Right,
but she's the Princess of. That's like a new story that you want to write, a Harry Potter fanfic.
There you go.
The Princess of Azkaban. Bellatrix Lestrange.
Yeah, and we watched The Goblet of Fire together, and Order of the Phoenix is after that.
Yeah.
And Order of the Phoenix, both the book and the movie, just make me so uncomfortable. It's just, yeah. So I think that though that my view of she who shall not be named writing is that she really is an amazing writer. Like, she was able to create a world in these books that was so unique, and do this character development, and in the books, they have all those side stories that they don't even bring up in the movies, which we'll talk about some of that during this podcast. And it's just very rich, and very rich storytelling. And I've also read Casual Vacancy by her as well, and that book, like, the ending was very sad and heartbreaking, but still very, very good storytelling from her.
Good writer, not so great human being, apparently, as it turns out. Which
is so weird. It's so weird with these books, because that's what everybody says, is that it was all about acceptance and fighting. Basically, it sounds like they're kind of basically fighting Nazis.
Well, that's been the thing I've been saying on at least some of these episodes, is that Star Wars, they're space Nazis, and here they're magic Nazis.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly. So, I held back from reading the Harry Potter books for a long time, because I guess I kind of thought I didn't want to be popular.
You were being contrarian.
Okay. Yeah. Right. There you go. I was being contrarian. It's one of my charming qualities. And because my mom and my sister read the books, loved the books, watched the movies. I actually saw Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in 2001 in the movie theater, and that was the only one that I saw in the movie theater, and it was with my mom and my sister. So I'm just like, I don't want to read that. And so I waited a long time, and I'm glad that I am now part of that experience, because I do get to bring something different to it and more of a freshness, because, it was only a year ago, not this month, October, that I finished Deathly Hallows, the last book. So I do think, though, to also kind of speak about the films, is that the films are really rich too. I mean, they use amazing CGI, and art direction would be, I guess, a nice film term. And the characters of the actors that play Hermione and Harry, and I guess Ron.
Yeah, I noticed you didn't mention Ron. I was going to say
really fun, and they really do kind of like take on, encapsulate those characters. So the movies are fun too. They're just different.
So to clarify, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is the longest book.
Okay.
But it's actually the second shortest movie, which is interesting. So they just...
You only can take so much of umbrage.
I guess. So much. I like I said in my discussion with Amy Otero on that film, I would have liked more of the occlumency sequences with Snape. I think we kind of got a little bit of short shrift in that department. So what is it specifically when you, like you said, you were reading Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and you were like, this is the one I want to talk about. Why is this the one you wanted to talk about? And then I guess quick, short answer on that, and then we'll elaborate on it after
what are you trying to say?
After the jump.
Are you trying to say that I elaborate and provide too many details?
No. Did I sound like that? Did it sound like I said that?
No, because you said...
Well, because I don't want us to... Because I feel like that's leaning into the transition.
Oh.
And so I'm just like,
because if that's what you thought, you would be right.
No comments.
The reason I wanted to talk about Half-Blood Prince is that in the book, I really do pronounce book very strongly. But in the story, there was a lot of scenes about Voldemort's past, when he was Tom Riddle, when he then became Voldemort. And I just thought it was just really fascinating, learning about him and this creepy dude. He is creepy, and even in the books, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is freaky. This is kind of freaking me out a little bit, just how evil he is. And then of course he becomes even more evil.
Wait, are you talking about Harry Potter, or are you talking about the news these days? Anyway, before we get into any of that, let's listen to a little bit of the trailer for Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince right now.
This year,
Voldemort has chosen Draco Malfoy for a mission.
evil will pass through from their world into our own.
These are mad times we live in, mad!
And the darkest hour
It's beyond anything I imagined.
is upon us all.
In my life, I've seen things that are truly horrific. Now I know you will see worse. You're the chosen one, Harry.
You have to realize who you are.
Without you would leave the fate of our world to chance. You have no choice. Harry, no! You must not fail. It's over.
That was a little bit of the trailer for Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince from 2009, directed by David Yates. So here's the thing. This is basically a magical reflection on where we are in the world now. It is essentially how I feel about it. And I think it's really worn down on me. I feel like this series of episodes started off very positively, and by the end of this, I'm just like, this is like a lot. I think it's just the world in general, too, that's kind of worn on me over time. Care to weigh in on here's a good segue, how the Harry Potter series sort of parallels 2020, because Amy and I got into that in Order of the Phoenix, as people may or may not have listened to by now. and how much it felt relevant to today with everything going on politically. And this one, I feel like, builds on that in a way that the first sequence, as I wrote down, is the wizarding world crossing over into the Muggle world. So, like, the Death Eaters are straight up terrorizing random citizens in London, like, not even trying to stick to the wizarding community. So, any thoughts on Half-Blood Prince and how it relates to this chaotic ass year?
Well, I first actually wanted to just say that I had said some comments about that when we were watching the movie, that is not how the book opened. But what actually, the trivia reminded me that they opened it that way because that was when the new, I don't remember his name, the Ministry of Magic guy, the new one.
The one that in the next one I think is Bill Nye in a cameo. He's like in one scene. I think.
And so I
can't remember his name right
just
now.
doing action
not Bill Nye, the
sequence.
science guy. To be fair,
doing an action sequence of his exposition in the beginning of that book. So that's what it was. So it was just instead of him sitting there in an armchair talking about it.
it's more cinematic to actually show the attack.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm more okay with that. I definitely feel like this movie. Oh wait, Order of Phoenix or Half-Blood Prince?
Half-Blood Prince, because it starts out the first scene of Half-Blood Prince, which by the way is inexplicably rated PG, the same rating as like Shrek, which is like okay, sure, Warner Brothers. It opens literally the first scene before the title even comes up is right after Voldemort disappeared at the end of Order of the Phoenix. You even hear Harry, you even hear Bellatrix kind of doing the "I killed Sirius Black" that thing, and it cuts to all the people taking pictures of Dumbledore and Harry as like the media or whatever arrives in the Department of Mysteries. So it literally picks up right from there. So there's not a lot of, I guess there's a few months of time between the end of one school year and the beginning of the next, but it has that scene and then reveal the fact that Harry has been kind of just chilling for the summer.
He wasn't even at the Dursleys, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. And I think in the books, even they didn't want to take him back or whatever. By the way, Minister Rufus Scrimgeour.
Yeah. No, in the books, he's at the Dursleys' house every year until the Deathly Hallows.
Yeah.
Which they don't ever say this in the movies, but this is very important. And this is good. I'm getting off what you asked me.
That's fine. That's what we do.
The reason, for those of you that have listening that have not read the books, the reason why Harry Potter has to go back to the Dursleys every summer is because the love that his mother's love bonded him, and it still goes through to her sister, and so her sister, his aunt
Petunia,
who's been absolutely horrible to Harry, she made a promise to Dumbledore back that day when they took Harry in, that I don't 100% remember what the promise was, but Harry has to be there every year for just a short bit of time to just be bonded, to continue that bond of love, so that way Voldemort and the Death Eaters can't hurt him. And
I actually forgot that detail.
so that's
interesting.
it's very important to note that, because you're probably all thinking like, why the hell does he keep going back there?
Yeah, they suck.
I mean, he's obviously a minor still, but it's like he could go back. He could stay with the Weasleys this whole time, but he has to keep going back to the Dursleys' house.
Right.
So, I don't remember exactly what happened in the book where he was at the Dursleys, but yeah. So, definitely it does mirror what's going on politically. There's a battle waging between the Voldemort and the Death Eaters and versus the Order of the Phoenix and those that Voldemort and crew hurt. So there's like an uprising, and I kind of feel like some of that is stirring now as we record this, and people feeling something's going to happen to them, I guess, if now that the Death Eaters are out there and they're kind of the majority and they're wreaking havoc, people all around feeling very uncomfortable and that something's going to happen to them and that it's not really safe to even go anywhere, which for us, like, yeah, it's not safe to go anywhere because we're trying to, like, not have there's this virus around.
There's no pandemic in Magic Nazis is the pandemic in Harry Potter. And this is actually probably the Harry Potter movie that I feel like I like more than most people. I feel everybody's sort of on the same page with Prisoner of Azkaban, and until my most recent rewatch, Order of the Phoenix was probably on the lower end of my my ranking. I think I appreciate it more now watching it in 2020. But I actually liked Half-Blood Prince quite a bit when I first saw it because of the focus on Dumbledore and Harry, because we get a lot more of what's going on Voldemort's side of things. The development for Snape and Malfoy, the fact that they've been sort of dormant threats to Harry. I mean, Malfoy shows up and it's like, "What are you doing here, Potter?" And that's kind of been his thing for 5 movies.
What are you doing here, book?
Yeah, right, exactly. And this is where both of them become actual threats to Harry, other than like obstacles that he has to avoid while he and Hermione and Ron. So notice both Kai and myself went Harry, Hermione, and then Ron is last. I feel like a lot of people might order them Harry, Ron, Hermione, but it's very clearly Harry because he's the title character, and then Hermione, and then Ron is like an afterthought. Harry, Hermione, ... a few spaces, and then Ron.
I think this is better than you saying Jenny before Ron.
I like Ginny all right. She's she's more bland of a character in the movies than she is in the books, by far. So I really like the way that you finally get some payoff for these characters that have been really looming in the background. And I think that's the challenge of a lot of these movies. They're like, all right, this is a long story and everyone has important roles to play, but they're not huge roles to play. You know what I mean? Like Maggie Smith doesn't have that much, Dame Maggie Smith, doesn't have that much to do here. But when she's there, it's important that she's there because McGonagall needs to be a constant presence. And when she's there, her screen time counts. Like you get excited to see Hagrid, who's again in these movies a lot less after the third one. And McGonagall and people like that, like they have roles to play, but they're more background players in a way. And I feel like this is the one where Dumbledore is almost as important to the story as Harry. This is the one where Snape is a focal point. Spoilers, the other title character, even. Where Malfoy actually is a substantive character and not, to reference our current obsession with Cobra Kai, and not Harry's Johnny Lawrence, essentially.
They're both blonde. What's up with that?
I think we talked about this when we were watching Cobra Kai, which, by the way, if you haven't watched Cobra Kai, stop this podcast, listen to it later, and go watch Cobra Kai, and then come back and listen to this podcast and hear us be like, Cobra Kai, it's great, isn't it? Because I'm obsessed with Cobra. That's going to have to be a future episode, like I've talked about.
Crooked Detour?
Well, I need to bring those back, but no, we're on a tangent again.
Detour, you mean?
yeah, we're on a major detour. So I like that we get more of those characters that have been there the whole time, only now they actually have something to do. So what are your thoughts on Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince and the way that we all of a sudden, at once, Ginny Weasley, Albus Dumbledore, Severus Snape, Draco Malfoy all kind of level up in this movie from, yeah, we're here, but we're not really that important, to, oh shit, we're bringing it. Like, we're kind of becoming the most important characters. Not as much Ginny, but I mean, she ends up with Harry, so that's important.
Spoilers.
To Harry. Spoilers. Yeah, spoilers for a 11-year-old movie and 15-year-old book or something. So what are your thoughts on the way that those characters, especially Draco and Malfoy, sort of rise to the occasion, and the way the story shifts in their direction.
Did you say Draco and Malfoy?
Draco, did I say Draco and Malfoy?
I think so.
I'm on my third
he's-
Icelandic beer.
So is this kind of like the similar
Snape
situation
and-
with Robert and Junior?
That's right.
There's
Don't do
two-
that. That's a screen fix thing.
I
Now
know,
we're
you're
crossing
right.
over.
Got
We're
me there.
bringing gags over from show to show. It can't be that kind of cross pollination. You're messing with my branding, guy.
Well, with Draco, like with just the fact that his father is a Death Eater and
He's a magic Nazi.
yeah, and evil. There's one of those situations where Draco was gonna go from bully to like making bad decisions and becoming a bad person. So it was kind of one of those things. It was inevitable. So it is interesting that so in those other movies he was like kind of in the background, just like a bully
Right.
and annoying, and then now it's like he's up to no good.
Well, it's that's what. Well, continue
right,
your finish your thought, but I
he's
want to get
working
to
to be up to no good,
Right.
And then you really kind of get a sense of Snape. You're like, I already knew that he was up to no good.
He was
but
on
now
the fence. Like we were like, is he up to no good? Question mark.
but then with this movie and how you're like, oh my God, Snape, like straight up, not good. You know?
Well,
he's a bad.
That was the big thing leading into the release of the 7th book. Since you mentioned that, let's just bring that up. When the 7th book came out, that was like the whole marketing thing was like Snape, good or evil.
And that's the thing. I didn't even watch the movies. I didn't read the books.
And you knew about that,
But
probably.
I knew about Snape. Yeah, I'm watching Deathly Hallows Part 1. I'm like, is he good or bad?
Right.
Like, he's bad.
He
right?
looks
and
bad.
And they're like, so.
Well, that's part of what's interesting about Goblet of Fire? Goblet of Fire, I think. Because it raises the question, well, like, once you're a Death Eater, are you always a Death Eater? Like, once you're once you're a magic Nazi, are you always a magic Nazi? Can you be rehabilitated? Can you see the error of your ways and become not a magic Nazi? And that's been the question surrounding Snape. That's a big part of Goblet of Fire, because the whole surge of Voldemort potentially returning and the Death Eaters kind of gathering, and there's like Karkakoff is showing Snape his mark, and he's been like, he's coming back, yo, get ready, circle of wagons. And the question is, well, are you locked into that position, or can you break out of it? And I think that that's an interesting question that they pose for Snape, because he is sort of a double agent, and it's like, okay, well, where does this is he working with Dumbledore and sneakily like undercover with Voldemort, or is it the other way around? And I think that's a really fascinating question that they raise most pointedly in this movie, which seems to answer the question but does it really?
I also think it could be also compared to the Mafia.
Yeah, it could be compared to the Mafia.
You try to get out and they just like keep pulling you back in.
Yeah.
Like, nope, you can't leave. You owe us money, or
It's like
we're gonna kill your family.
It's like The Departed, where you have a cop undercover with the gangsters and a gangster undercover with the cops. I think that's really interesting. That really delves into Snape's duplicity or perceived duplicity. And the Unbreakable Vow is kind of a brilliant way to put that to the test, where it's like, it's she who must not be named. Let's just call her the author. It's the author setting that up. Like, whatever's happening here, something's going to go down, because if you can't break this vow. It's a binding magical contract, to borrow something from Goblet of Fire. So the question with Snape is this guy, is he still a magic Nazi, or is he in Dumbledore's army? Is he in the Order of the Phoenix? And then what I love about the Malfoy question is that Malfoy has been in the shadow of Harry Potter ever since they both arrived at Hogwarts. You know, he's been envious of his attention he's gotten, the fame he's gotten, et cetera, et cetera.
And
By this point,
don't forget to mention that Harry also rejected Draco's friendship.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's really what may have burned.
You don't want to make. It's like you don't want to make friends with the wrong kind. He looked over at Ron. Yeah.
And I think that's maybe what's been the big predecessor for Draco's resentment towards Harry, including those other things you mentioned.
Yeah.
Just he was rejected by Harry Potter,
right,
as a friend.
But then,
even though, what the hell does that even mean in Draco Malfoy's world?
But look at loyalty, and look at the current administration and how loyalty, in air quotes, loyalty is kind of a mafia level importance in the, whatever. Let's get back to the magic world. So, and then after Order of the Phoenix, I think Lucius was pretty much outed as a Death Eater, and his shit fell apart.
What did he do again?
I think he got in trouble. They probably got, it was
Ministry of Magic. He worked there, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that it was became known that he's a Death Eater, and their family was kind of in ruins, like not doing well financially, like not bad reputation. Like they were like the elite. Like they were like the 1% in the wizarding world, and now they're like on the bottom. Yeah, basically. So I think Malfoy feels like he needs to prove himself to his father, to Voldemort. Otherwise, Voldemort's going to kill him. And so the question is, yeah, you can go around and you can bully Harry Potter, and you can, be the Johnny Lawrence of Hogwarts, but ultimately, I'm pouring Kai's beer right now. But ultimately, are you willing to do what it takes to dispatch the Dumbledore and the rest of the good wizarding world, the good side of the wizarding world that he represents? And I think that's essentially where Malfoy's dilemma is. And I think that's really interesting that it puts this sort of secondary villain to the test of whether or not he is truly evil, or just was raised that way and just feels like he needs to fit in, like he needs to be that guy to compete with Harry Potter to try and escape the shadow of the boy who lived.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the question with Draco from the beginning, was he just a bully and a punk kid, or is he a bad person? Is he evil? And this movie, delves into that, and no.
He's not evil.
He's not.
Well,
evil.
That's what Hermione even says. You think he would have done it?
Yeah, he's complicated.
Yeah,
and he's like he's like, hey, here's a cursed necklace for you, Katie. Oh, here's a poisoned mead for you, Dumbledore. But he never was able to do any of those acts himself. That's not.
And I remember, by the way, you said he's complicated, and I was going to make a Nancy Meyers joke about the movie It's Complicated, which came out the same year as this, so it's all connected.
Okay.
Hashtag it's all connected. Yeah, and then I hadn't read the books until after the movies, because at that point I'm more of a movie guy, so it's like, well, I'll just watch the movie and then read the book after the fact. So I didn't really get the whole Vanishing Cabinet thing until pretty close to the end. I didn't really get the connections with Katie Bell and the cursed necklace and the poisoned bottle of mead, and Dumbledore even calls him out and being like, this doesn't seem like you don't seem like you're just not that into it. Basically, it was his thing.
And the thing with the Vanishing Cabinet, if I remember correctly from the book, that I don't think came up until the basically kind of close to the end.
Yeah.
They didn't do anything with like having these scenes with Draco and the Vanishing Cabinet and the room requirement. It just came up later. They didn't
build it up over this. Yeah.
Just like, he's like, yeah, when I was in the room of requirement and the Vanishing Cabinet and this happened. So when does the fire happen then?
Which fire? The fire of the Burrows?
Room of requirement. I really thought.
Oh, that one. That's I think that might be even Deathly Hallows Part 2. Okay. So I just want to point this out. I made a "he's just not that into you" reference. I'm just really plugged in right now, I guess. Also a movie from 2009. Wow. So I'm in 2009 mindset right now. So ask me anything. I really like, and I noted this when we were watching the movie last night, that Dumbledore, it seems like his priority here is to save Malfoy, to save Draco's soul, in a way. You know what I mean? Like, he sends Severus and makes him tells him to commit to that because he doesn't want Draco to have to do it, because Draco is on the wrong side, but not, he's like Anakin Skywalker after killing the Tusken Raiders in episode 2, but before murdering before murdering younglings.
He's being seduced.
Yeah, he's in the process of being groomed to be evil, but he's not beyond salvation at that point, basically. And so Dumbledore is valuing Draco's life over his own. And over Harry's. I mean, we talk about that there's a sequence late in the movie, probably one of my favorite sequences in the film, where Harry and Dumbledore go on their little quest to try and retrieve one of the Horcruxes. And, he's like, oh, he cuts his hand because he's like, oh, my blood is far less valuable. I'm not as important as you. My job is to help you on your journey. If I have to die to make that happen, worth it. It's essentially war, basically. And I really think that you see after 5 movies of Dumbledore, and I mentioned this with Amy Otero, 5 movies of Dumbledore constantly walking in there at the end and being like, listen, Harry, I fucked up. I should have told you what was up from the beginning instead of being like, surprise, this was my plan the whole time.
I did want to say something about what you were talking about with with Draco being groomed to be evil, but he's not beyond salvation. We've even talked about that before, where just personally, where when you keep committing bad acts, it makes it easier to be a bad person, to continue doing it. Like, you kind of lose your conscience.
When did we talk that about in real life or on the show on the podcast?
We talked about that in real life.
IRL, as the kids say.
Yeah. And because once you start going down the path of doing,
you're just quoting wrong, Yoda? Are you serious?
Doing wrong, it's a lot easier to keep doing wrong and to kind of lose your conscience and compassion for other people. So I guess that's kind of the thing with Dumbledore. He's like, I have to save Draco, because once he kind of does that one bad act, that bad decision,
murder. Once he, and that's what you're saying perfectly dovetails into the metaphor of this series for that. Once you commit that unspeakable act of taking another life, it literally in this magical world splits your soul into pieces. So would Draco have a Horcrux then after that if he had done that? If he did the spell to accompany it. But it's sort of like on Buffy where, like, yeah, you're with this guy and he seems great, but then you have sex with him and he's like, yeah, that was nice, fun time, bye. Like that, which in the world of Buffy, that's the metaphor, but in the fantastical world, because he knows pure happiness, as in has a climax sexually, in case that wasn't obvious. He then loses his soul, basically. So this is the metaphor for that, is how it literally tears apart your soul. And I think that that Dumbledore's priority is the kids, for the kids with that. So I love that side of his story, and the fact that he's so blatantly at this point sees himself as a pawn to push Harry's journey forward. And I think that's really fascinating to me.
Well, also with that too is that my theory is that he also wants to do that for Harry because he did wrong bringing Voldemort, Tom Riddle, into the school in the first place. So it's him trying to redeem himself in that lack of judgment that he had. And in good riddance for Dumbledore, though, he was trying to give this kid the benefit of the doubt and give him the...
Well, good riddance for Dumbledore sounds like you're like, yeah, fuck that guy.
No, I mean, like, good riddance for a decision that he made,
props to Dumbledore.
Yeah, like, you only want to give people the benefit of the doubt, and you don't want to, like...
That's a good
You don't want to prejudge them, but... Yeah, Tom Riddle was a bad dude. He was a bad kid, and he had a really. And the thing is that he had a really sad upbringing. They don't even show this in the movie, but there was in the book there was a memory of him and his mother, who was a witch, and that she gave Tom Riddle's father a love potion, which that's what made him fall in love with her. And then the spell got broken.
I forgot this because I haven't...
We talk about love potions a lot in this movie, but they don't even go into detail about that.
There's only so much... The movie's 2.5 hours as it is, and it's pretty... I mean, there's not a lot of fat on this movie. I think some of the love... Well, even the love potion stuff with Ron is relevant. Like, it builds to the Slughorn stuff, but... But
I think that the love potion with the mom, the background, the story with the mom would have been really... beneficial for viewers, because that is the whole crux. Use the Horcrux of why really Tom Riddle became Voldemort. with Half-Blood Prince in the book, that's the other reason I enjoyed the story so much, and the movie too, is because it further explains why Harry Potter and Voldemort are so similar, and that the only difference between Harry Potter and Voldemort is love, mother's love. And in the book, it explains in the memory that the mother, Tom Riddle's mother, was so like forlorn over losing the love of Tom Riddle's father that she wasn't able to really give him love, and like went crazy. And meanwhile, Tom Riddle's father was
not there.
He was not there, and so that's why Tom Riddle grew up in an orphanage. And for Harry Potter, he knew. So he was also. So Tom Riddle's father was a Muggle, and his mother was a witch. So Tom Riddle, Voldemort, that even though that Death Eaters didn't know this, he was
a half-blood.
He was a half-blood. And
we, the viewers, know this because in Chamber of Secrets, the memory of Tom Riddle in the diary, which, again, we'll get to Chamber of Secrets in a second, says, "Oh, you didn't think I would take my filthy Muggle father's name?" And he has that whole thing where he says that.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely there's that animosity with his father, which then goes into why he starts doing what he does. That's how I think I forgot the memory exactly. Happens in the book that he goes back to like his grandfather's house or something like that and gets the ring and kills his grandfather, and
here the ring is
remove
just
any trace of his dad.
And here the ring just shows up,
right?
Like Dumbledore just has it. He just got it.
That's
and
why
he had to burn his hand or whatever to get it. And,
and that's why that book is so creepy to me, because you have this he's a teenager at this point. He's going to Hogwarts. He seeks out his family to kill them, to remove any remnants of his father who he hates, who abandoned his mom and abandoned him. And
is this something Voldemort did a long time ago or more recently?
It was one of his. I think it was one of his first murders.
Oh, okay.
It was one of the. I think it was one
again,
of the first.
I have read just about all the books, but it was a while ago.
And for me, it was a year ago. So
yeah, exactly. It's fresh.
I think it was one of his first murders. Was that
okay?
With that ring. And that's why it's such a shame that in the movies, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes or 2.5 hours, but like that's such an important.
Well, and then I think
piece.
It's also they have to focus on it's Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, so they have to focus on Harry Potter. So everyone that's not Harry Potter has to get trimmed out a little bit.
But for me, sorry. I think for me, like just the psychology of why someone goes bad is so fascinating. Like I've always been very intrigued by that. So to see those little nuggets of what happened to him, it's just like it's fascinating. So I'm like, wow, like it all makes sense. Like it does stem from lack of love, and that love is like a foundation to goodness. And even look at Draco Malfoy. I mean, could anybody say that he ever really felt love in his household? From his parents? From anyone? Most likely not. So Harry Potter and Voldemort, their lives, like, they're very similar, which is more explained in Deathly Hallows, but there's that one big difference of mother's love.
So at this movie, I mean, I think I had a lot of things to respond to that. One was when you brought up Dumbledore's guilt for Voldemort, like not being able to save him from the dark magic and all that other stuff. It sounded to me like the movie was trying to position, and this is not something I thought of until just now, basically, position him trying to save Malfoy and his redemption for him failing to save Voldemort.
There you go.
And these books and these movies deal with I mean, it's again to go back to Star Wars, last year's franchise. Like George Lucas likes to say, oh, it's like poetry, it rhymes. Like there's a lot of parallels in the books. There's a whole question of, well, Harry lost his parents, Neville lost his parents, who's the chosen one? And they throw that in there for 2 seconds, and then people are like, Harry Potter, and then the next book's like, it is Harry Potter, good job.
Even though in the books they talk about that a lot more.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Oh, I said that.
Oh,
yeah, I said that in the books.
Yeah.
And in the movies, it's really become more Harry and Voldemort and their similarities. And well, why are they similar? Why does Harry have, the ability to speak Parseltongue? and why, Harry can just as easily turn evil if he had made different choices. If, like you said, how they had very similar upbringings in a way. And the parallel between Malfoy and Harry, and Malfoy he basically sees himself, he wants to be the chosen one, essentially. He wants to be the one that's important. He's like, that's why he's like, no, they picked me, the Dark Lord picked me to do this. I'm chosen, I'm important, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to be the All Valley champion in 1984. So he wants to prove that he's worthy, that he's important, that he matters. Because he's so fucking tired of hearing about Harry Potter.
And like this whole thing when you're a kid, a teenager, and even an adult, that whole sense of validation and not feeling that you're loved. And regardless, Harry Potter, the difference between him, Voldemort, and Draco is that he did know that he was loved. He knew that his parents loved him, and his parents were there next to him, helping him fight Voldemort. He knows that he's loved by his friends. Right. He knows that he's loved by the Weasleys, and of course he would, and he has all this money, which of course he would give up if he could get his parents back. Right, of course. But he has love and that sense of validation. Where even in the movie,
it felt like you were. Go ahead.
Even in the movie, Hermione's like, she only likes you because you're the chosen one. He's like, well, I am the chosen one.
It's a great line. That was in all the trailers. It felt like you were building up to the Punch Drunk Love thing because we only just recently watched that, and he's like, I have a love in my life, and it makes me more powerful than you possibly or something like that. Which is a great movie, by the way. Listen to our episode on that. But yeah, it feels like the movies are really trying to build those parallels between Harry, Voldemort, and Malfoy in this one, at least. And I think that's an interesting angle to explore. We have so much more to talk about. We really got locked into the Malfoy of it all, which is interesting because Malfoy, up until this point, is not very well developed. In this episode, we also meet Fenrir Greyback, which is random because he just shows up and he's in the books more. But werewolves officially, exist in this. We knew that already with Lupin. And we talked about briefly how there's a whole backstory with Greyback and Lupin that's not even in this, which is kind of a bummer. But again, this is the kind of thing that gets trimmed out. And I wanted to comment on your point about love makes the difference. The whole franchise, apparently, unless you're transgender, according to the author, is about acceptance and love. And that's what saved Harry. That's the difference between him and Voldemort. That's what Harry says to Voldemort during the end of Order of the Phoenix when he's being possessed, like Amy and I talked about, when he's being possessed by Voldemort. And he's like, oh, I feel sorry for you because you're never going to know love or friendship. Like, everybody's just like scared of you, and that's why they do what they do. It's not because they're like, I will die for Voldemort. We love you. We're pick him. Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I just said that. Yeah. There's no real connection there, and I think that's an interesting. Yeah, I love that, the good and evil stuff. That's what makes this franchise great. And I want to talk about Horace Slughorn because we need to get to that. Yeah, you have something you want to add first.
I do.
Go ahead.
I think that you made a really good point that I want to bring up.
Thank you.
Once again, book versus movie parallel. So I believe this was in the book, Half-Blood Prince, that Dumbledore is talking to Harry about the Horcruxes and that they need to find them, and Harry said to Dumbledore, well, can I tell anybody? And he's like, and Dumbledore says to Harry, your friends are the most, are so important to you in your life. Yes, you need to have people that you can confide in. So Dumbledore even recognized the value of Hermione and Ron in Harry's life, and that it was so important to him to be able to confide in them and have people there that he could trust.
And to bring it back to, I mean, obviously I bring up Star Wars a lot in this series because I just talked about it last year and because I am a huge Star Wars fan. But to go back to Buffy, that's the big difference. You haven't seen all of that series, unfortunately. But to go back to Buffy, that's the reason why Buffy is a Slayer that lives on, because she's got friends, because she's got a community. She's got a team of people, friends and family that love her, that fight with her. She's got Xander and Willow and Giles and Spike and the Scooby Gang, exactly. And Anya and Angel, who are different people, different seasons, obviously. but she's got a team of people supporting her rather than just a slayer going off on her own. That's why they die so fast. It's just like one random person be like, I'm gonna do it. Oh, I'm dead. And then another person awakens.
Loneliness, as we're finding during the pandemic, is a very real thing.
Yeah.
For for the elderly community living in assisted living places, that loneliness is really what's killing them,
right?
Not COVID. So, the power of a community, a village, of love.
The power of love.
Yeah,
Huey Lewis in the
love.
news. We did a Back to the Future episode with Vanessa Taylor.
Yeah,
Listen to that.
J.K. Rowling knew all this.
Shh, don't say that. We don't say that name. Don't use that name, as Slughorn would say.
Okay, so let's go talk about.
See how I brought it back. So Jim Broadbent, as I wrote in my notes, Jim fucking Broadbent, great actor, Oscar winner for Iris, which I've never seen. I should probably watch that.
And don't forget about he was in Paddington.
He is in Paddington. He's not my favorite part of Paddington, but he is in Paddington. My favorite part of Paddington, spoilers, is Paddington. What does he say if everyone? What does he say?
I don't remember.
If everyone's kind and whatever. I forget the thing Paddington says. I have to look it up now. So what are your thoughts on Jim Broadbent? We've obviously had, up until this point, the first movie, it's Professor Quirrell's Defense Against the Dark Arts. Then it's Professor Lockhart, Defense Against the Dark Arts. Then it's Professor Lupin, Defense Against the Dark Arts. Then it's Mad-Eyed Moody, in air quotes, Defense Against the Dark Arts. Then it's Dolores Umbridge, Defense Against the Dark Arts. Now Snape finally gets the post he's been waiting for, and Slughorn takes over potions. So here, J.K., it's not Simmons. Simmons is the good one. J.K. mixes it up.
Wow.
J.K. Simmons.
R and then S.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and Simmons we love Simmons. He's great. Jake, we gotta watch Whiplash. You've never seen that. J.K. mixes it up and puts Slughorn in potions and Snape in Defense Against the Dark Arts. So should that have been the sign to us that Snape was more important to this story? And in tandem with that, I made a note that in hindsight, it should have been really obvious that Snape is the Half-Blood Prince, because it's all potion stuff and he was the potions master. And like you said, he was in his classroom and everything. So it's like, how did we not know? How did people not, well, that must be Snape's book, like right out the gate, first of all. And what do you think of Slughorn as a character in the grand tradition of this franchise, bringing in an eccentric professor every story?
I think that Slughorn was definitely an interesting character, and the way that Jim Broadbent played him was with like the mannerisms and the speech was kind of a good angle. Watching the movie though, and how Slughorn treats his students, it's hard not to look at it that he's playing favorites.
Oh, he absolutely 100% is. He wants to collect the set of the Black family.
When I was reading the trivia, it's more that he's following meritocracy. Meritocracy.
Great word.
Yeah.
Good job, Kai.
I can't even say it. That he,
That's how you know a word is great.
That he wants to collect those that are smart, capable, the best in their class. So it's not. So if the other students want to be at that level, they need to be that. They need to step up and get to that level. That's probably why he doesn't care about Ron, because Ron was like,
because Ron sucks.
Because Ron's a goober, and
that's what you said when we watched it.
Yeah, and so he just wants to be around the best at the best.
Right, exactly. He can't be great, so he wants to be great by association. That's why in the beginning he's like, "Oh, this person, the editor of the Daily Prophet, takes my owl whenever I have an opinion on what's going on," and then the other dude is like, the other girl plays for this Quidditch team. I get tickets whenever I want. I'm like, yeah, I don't know I'm not that great as an individual, but people know me, so I got connections. Basically.
And the reality is that is how it is in IRL. That is very.
You're stealing my IRL that I stole from the kids. Yeah.
And that's how it is in school. Like, I mean, my grandmother always got mad at me when I said that I have teachers that would give me grades. Because my grandmother used to be a teacher. She's like, teachers don't give you grades. I'm like, yes, they do. But yeah, if you're in school and you're kind of like the teacher's pet, like, yeah, I think sometimes you get better grades because of that. And then same thing with definitely the corporate world. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, for sure, seeing people that are favorites of those on top that are getting these promotions that may be getting more money, and it's all in who you know. So that's totally
Slughorn's
true.
jam.
Yeah. I do think, though, that it's tragic that Slughorn, had this secret that he was ashamed of, which he should have been ashamed of.
I mean, yeah, I would be ashamed of that.
And did not feel comfortable and felt ashamed even, like, that he had to tamper with that memory. Because, first, Dumbledore brings Tom Riddle to Hogwarts.
Being like, we can fix this kid.
Yeah, so bad judgment there, but he was trying to see the good in him.
Well, he was 11 years old, according to the credits. Like, you don't want to just be like, yeah, this 11-year-old is fucked up. Drop him in the, like, Bane's pit from The Dark Knight Rises and leave him there until he rots.
Brea tar pit.
Yeah, exactly.
And then definitely bad judgment on Slughorn's part to tell Tom Riddle, Horcrux, but
he was basically like Viola Davis singing, like, here's how you get away with murder, pretty much.
Yeah, and you mentioned it's because he was scared of him. I mean, I feel like he
was an intense dude. You even said when that scene came up, you're like, oh, here comes that creepy kid. And they tried to get the kid from Chamber of Secrets.
The other kid was more creepy.
This new kid? Yeah. Chamber of Secrets kid
was more creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh my God.
But that was like 7 years earlier. He was like, I'm 26 or whatever. I'm not going to be like 16. I'm not going to pass for 16
anymore.
He
wanted to play it.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, dude.
You're too old. You look like you're 40.
You're not Ralph Macchio.
Yeah, apparently. Who's like 50. We're talking about Cobra Kai a lot because we're hoping we can finish this episode and then have time to watch Cobra Kai before SNL. Let's just break it down. So we're all Rob Macchio, who's in his mid-50s and looks like he's the same age as he was in the 80s. Yeah, he still looks like he's 12.
Like Slughorn, he's telling him everything. I mean, why, if he's, I know he's scared of him, but he could still just say something like,
well, Slughorn is that's why he's like, oh, you're not like the other professors, you're different. As in, you're gullible, and I can push you around and get the answers that I want from you really easily. Plus, I feel like, is he manipulating him somehow? Because Voldemort, Tom Riddle keeps touching his like ring. Is he like doing some kind of like
that ring? Because that's
the ring that Dumbledore, one of the Horcruxes.
That's his grandfather's ring.
I think
that's like hypnotic or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It was like some like Get Out style, like have some tea, ding ding.
That was from another movie too. That was from
with the ring.
Yes, that was from a movie we just watched.
No, that was from Agent Carter. That's what it was from. Because we were watching that recently on Disney Plus. But yeah, so that's what makes Slughorn different. That's why that's why Voldemort, I have 3 Icelandic beers, ladies and gentlemen. That's why Voldemort goes to him to be like, hey, what up, dude, who I can intimidate? What's a Horcrux and how do I use it? Give me everything I need to know. And he's like, okay, Jesus,
and then
scary.
And Harry Potter was like, yeah, I'm going to just do the same.
Well, and again, with the parallel thing, though, it fits thematically with, what if I'm going bad? Yeah, he's not very smart.
He's not very creative.
He's like, but what up? What did you do? And he's like, he does this, he just like quotes the same lines that Tom Riddle said. And then he's like, oh yeah, is that what you said when Tom Riddle asked you? And Slughorn's like, Jesus, you're scary. I'm running away.
And the thing is also Tom Riddle had been in Slughorn's class, and like he knew him more than just like 1 or 2 instances with Harry Potter, and also
they've been going to classes every week or whatever.
Knowing
but too.
that Harry Potter was Voldemort's enemy,
right?
And he was the chosen one, so it just
Dumbledore put you up to this. It was pretty fast for him to figure that out,
dude.
Yeah, he's not very subtle.
Doofus.
He's not very subtle, but
Ron's a goober. Harry's a doofus,
and Hermione's just way too good for the rest of these kids. I think is what we're saying, right?
Yeah, that's what
this should have been Hermione Granger and the stupid assholes she has to hang out with. They should have called this. That's honestly, that's been one of my biggest takeaways. I'm like, fuck, Hermione's cool, and Emma Watson should be in more things. I know she was in Beauty and the Beast, which is kind of a whatever movie, but why is she not like a huge star?
Maybe she doesn't want to be a huge star.
She should be. She's
Harvard
great
or something.
She's like 30 now. She's out of that now, probably.
Wasn't she going?
Yeah, I think she was one of those smart, famous people, like Natalie Portman.
They do exist.
I'm not saying that they don't, but like one of those like notoriously academic, I guess. Let's put it that way. Because Hermione. We'll get to the love stuff in a second. So I love. I do really enjoy Jim Broadbent in this and most things I've seen him in, and I love the fact, getting into the Tom Riddle of it all, that this is essentially Chamber of Secrets Part 2 in some regards. The only thing we don't revisit in this movie is Dobby, who comes back in the next one. Spoilers.
Oh yeah, Dobby.
And then the actual Chamber of Secrets. We get back the riddle, Tom Riddle's diary. Like, there's a lot of elements from that story that this feels like it's building on. And to your point earlier about all the Tom Riddle flashbacks, it feels like this is like the relative calm before the storm, where it's giving you the backstory of Tom Riddle so that y'all could be up to speed for when Deathly Hallows comes and the big show, builds to the big showdown between the two, so that you understand where Voldemort's coming from more. And of course, you've been watching Harry's story the whole time, so when they come face to face, as in that poster for the last movie, which is just the two of them and their wands, like, it all ends, and we're like, okay, I guess it's gonna be there. So that feels like a culminating. It feels more epic. The stakes are higher, you know.
Yeah.
This is where the threads.
And they just like kill people in these movies. Like you said, after the fourth one, people just die.
Right, which
Freaking Dumbledore.
Yeah, I know. Well, then fourth one is Cedric, fifth one is Sirius Black, sixth one is Dumbledore, seventh one is, spoilers,
everybody.
The house elf that I just mentioned. No, the movies. I'm saying Dobby. And spoilers for people listening to this. That's the deal in these movies after a certain point. That's why I'm kind of curious if they're going to do illustrated versions of the ones where all the kids die. But this is a very potions heavy one. This is the most potions heavy. There's the love potions. There's liquid luck. There's the potions textbook that is the title device for the whole movie. So what were your thoughts on? I think a lot of people, including friends of mine, felt that this movie was focusing too much on the love triangle and the romantic bullshit with the kids, and not enough on Voldemort's past and the heavier, darker elements. Do you feel like the David Yates, the director, and the screenwriter Steve Kloves, that they got the balance off? That in here they're more like they're focusing so much more on Hermione likes Ron, but Ron's dating Lavender Brown, and she only likes him because he's bullshit.
Yeah.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah.
Go.
It
elaborate
bums me
on
out that like in this movie, the reason I like the Half-Blood Prince book is because they talk. They have the Tom Riddle memories, and it was just like so powerful to kind of get that backstory. And yes, it's Harry Potter, but I wanted to see that in this film, and they didn't really do that. And like, I really kind of actually don't even feel like some of the love potions even got that much detail in the books. I don't, at least I don't remember them because they were kind of boring. And I'm still wondering why Hermione was even into Ron in the first place.
He's a goober, as previously established.
Yeah.
I wrote down he was a dick, but you wrote goober. But he's not a dick all the time. He's a dick in that one scene, which we'll get to.
Yeah. But yeah, there was a lot about the love triangles that I didn't really feel like was... Did
you care about it? Were you invested in that? Or were you like, no, I don't care, dude. Get back away from this.
No, I didn't care.
Oh, see, I like that shit.
I mean, like, I think
the difference there.
For me, I think I was more frustrated with Hermione because she was getting mad at Ron for getting with Lavender, but like, her and Ron they weren't together. They were friends. And
I know.
He went into the relationship with love, and she's like, "Oh, I'm mad at him." And I'm like, "But you're not even communicating to him that you even like him."
I mean, if you have eyes and you're not a freaking idiot teenage boy, which I mean, I was at one point anyway, but it's kind of clear if you're paying attention that she does like him. But we're watching as she's like that one scene, that part that I quoted back to you yesterday when we were watching it. When he's like, "Oh, I don't like Dean over there hanging out and snogging my sister," and she's like, "Oh, what if Ginny came over and looked over here and you were snogging me? Like, what's it gonna do?" And she's like all awkward about it. It was super adorable.
Yeah,
I don't understand why he's not like on that. And I'm not saying objectifying Hermione. I'm saying on that relationship, like he should be on.
Hermione's too good for him. Like,
well, yeah, duh. That's like the understatement of the franchise.
Hermione's great. Like, I can't. Maybe subconsciously, this is what he's thinking.
Maybe it could be.
No, it would have been nice
if
they've spent more time on Tom Riddle, Voldemort's memories than the love potion. Which, like I said, I don't even think it even got that.
But you can also
attention in the books.
But there's
also a kids movie.
I was gonna say these are movies for air quotes kids. You can't make it
PG.
too. You can't. Yeah, it shouldn't be PG. I mean, you can't make it too scary. So more of the Dumbledore's, the Voldemort. You know why I keep doing that? The Voldemort stuff would have made it more scary. First of all. Secondly, this is also for preteens and teens who are invested in the romantic love triangle crap. And who's dating who, and Ginny's dating Dean Thomas, and and all that stuff. So I think that's part of why they focused on that. But also they've been building to Ron being with Hermione since pretty early on. It seems kind of obvious they have a connection.
Was that?
At least the third one, they're kind of teasing things like they might like each other, but they're like awkward about it because they're kids and they're friends, and it's like, where's that line? The Harry Ginny thing comes out of nowhere, so that's just like, sure, okay, whatever. He feels like he's part of the Weasley
together.
I guess.
She's the girl that marries her brother's best friend.
Pretty much, like she is.
Yeah,
she is. And by the way, I wrote this down too. Harry got game. Like Harry in the beginning of the movie is like all set to like go on a date with that waitress after she gets off. That was not an innuendo. I didn't mean it that way. Gets off from her job. So I like that. I think that they're illustrating how much these characters have grown. That now they're like, hey, we want love lives too. We get a little of that in the last couple, but now it really kind of comes to a head. So the scene that I was talking about a few minutes ago is when, of course, Hermione is heartbroken with Ron, and he's like making out with Lavender, and she's upset and has the birds going after him. I really feel for Hermione, and I get emotional on her behalf. Like, I root for the Ron Hermione thing mostly because I want Hermione to be happy, not because Ron deserves her, because Ron is the doofus of the group. Ron is if this was Lord of the Rings, Ron is like the Pippin of the hobbits, not even the Merry.
Well, you want some trivia? So apparently Lavender, the actress that played Lavender, was referred by Emma Watson.
Oh, that's funny.
They auditioned like thousands of girls, and the actress that got Lavender's part didn't even audition.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so...
I mean, she's good in her role as the kind of awestruck, obnoxious teenage girl, where we're all just like, oh, God, get over it. He's not that great.
I just did find it annoying in the books, though, and I know you didn't talk about this yet, but
sure,
because we're now like in the middle of the movie, but
we're kind of all over the place.
There was a note that I made. So it was in the beginning of the movie where they're on the train, and Harry's wearing the invisibility cloak.
Yep.
And it kind of bums me out with the movie that Draco, like, you don't even hear what Harry's overhearing like he does in the book. And because that was kind of like the whole impetus to why
Is it anything? What does he hear in the book that is, again, because I don't, it's been
different
forever.
than what's already shown in the movie?
Other than
really.
Malfoy might be up to some shady stuff, and that's all you need to hear, right?
Right, but it was like all the impetus of why he got an invisibility cloak and why he got his ass kicked by Draco, which actually was worse in the book.
Yeah.
But it's like, why did they didn't even show that, like what Harry overheard.
Well, it sounds like as you just said, it doesn't sound like it was anything particularly interesting.
So it's like, why do they even show that?
That he's like being, because
I guess him getting like being late to school.
His suspicion of Malfoy already from that point early on in the story, because that carries over throughout the rest of the movie, where he's like eavesdropping and hearing Malfoy talk to Snape about like, oh, I need to do this and blah, blah, blah. Like, remember there's that scene, which, by the way, this movie got like a lot of positive remarks for its cinematography. I think it is really well shot. I think that all of these movies really look great, but this one in particular, there's certain, like, it has a more meditative quality to it than most of the movies up to this point that I think is really interesting. I think Order of the Phoenix has moments of that too.
What do you mean by that?
Like, it's more like quiet character beats, character moment. Like, they let the emotion happen. Like, you see sort of from a distance Snape and Malfoy talk about the unbreakable vow, and then the camera just like pans over slowly and reveals Harry kind of listening in. Things like that. Like, it's very deliberate and measured, the filmmaking at this point. I think David Yates has kind of proved himself a pretty steady hand with this franchise, which is why Warner Brothers has just been like, here's a dump truck full of money, make more. And he's like, sure. I mean, I was doing like British TV movies before this, because he literally wasn't doing like big movies until these movies were offered to him.
Isn't that crazy? Like, I wonder what that's like for these directors that have done smaller type projects, and then they get this big truck full of money and this opportunity, and like if that's intimidating, because that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another trivia point is that Emma Watson, and you can see this in some articles that came out recently, Emma Watson actually had a crush on Tom Felton, who played Draco Malfoy in the movies. And he's like a couple of years older than the other kids.
Then yeah.
And she had a crush on
like
him.
you said, he looks like he's a couple years older. Like he looks like he's 35, should have been playing 17 or whatever. And he's not, but he's like 23 or whatever. I want to run through a few other things. We talked about Hermione and how Ron's clearly inferior to her on basically every level. Attractiveness, acting, intelligence, just like all of that.
Hair.
Yeah, she's got great hair. That even Dumbledore,
And skin.
even Dumbledore in this movie is like, so what's up? He's basically like sidles over to Harry and he's like, what up, bro? You hitting that kind of thing? And Harry's like, no, we're just friends. And Dumbledore's like, really? Are you sure? Because it's either you or Ron.
Wouldn't Hermione be more into Harry than Ron? No, she's into Ron.
I know. I don't get it. It's, whatever. There's always, I'm not going to judge on other people's fictional relationships.
Even J.K. Rowling's like, I don't know what I did.
I screwed up. You mentioned the name we shouldn't have said again. Also, Baby Voldemort, played by Ralph Fiennes, who plays Voldemort's nephew. Ralph Fiennes doesn't play Voldemort's nephew. Ralph Fiennes plays Voldemort. It's Ralph Fiennes' nephew playing 11-year-old Voldemort, which I think is interesting. I love how this whole thing is basically very Inception style. We mentioned that. The whole thing ends up being about Harry being asked by Dumbledore to let Slughorn collect him so that he can get the memory to find out what the hell Voldemort was up to. Here's my question.
Why do you use that word collect? That's very interesting choice of words.
Because he has the whole mantle, these are all the people the students I've taught, like the whole thing, he considers them like a part of his, he says at the beginning, he says, I taught all the blacks except for Sirius, but I would have liked to have had the set. He very much sees that as it's his legacy and the students that he teaches and things like that. So,
and actually, more description about that trivia is that he did not teach Sirius, but Sirius was in. He taught Sirius, but he didn't have Sirius in Slytherin. Sirius was the only black that was not in Slytherin.
He was in Gryffindor?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's how he became friends with the.
These movies make Slytherin look really bad, but there are Slytherins that are not evil. It's just. In these movies, it seems like
they are.
If you're in Slytherin, if you're evil, you're in Slytherin. But the distinction I'm trying to make is, if you're in Slytherin, you're not necessarily evil. But if you're evil, you're probably in Slytherin.
Right, exactly.
But not all the Slytherin are evil.
They're not mutually exclusive. It's an SAT question.
Yeah, there's a lot of quizzes on which house of. Which Hogwarts house are you in?
I'm obviously Hufflepuff.
I feel like I'm one of the. I'm probably a Ravenclaw or Hufflepuff. I don't know.
Ravenclaw.
I don't know. I don't know where I am. I have to look into it. I feel like I'm obviously one of the two houses nobody really talks about that we just mentioned. Neither one of us was like, I'm brave like a Gryffindor, or I'm like self-focused like a Slytherin or whatever. I want power like a Slytherin. We're just like, no, we probably just like live our lives and chill. I don't know. The two houses nobody cares about. I love that. We get more Quidditch in this movie, but who cares because it's boring.
My God, what gloomy weather's there!
Yeah,
Jesus.
It really sucks.
The weather for Quidditch is like so snowy and cold and ugh.
So going back to the romantic stuff, now that we're finding our rhythm here again, I really like the fact that Harry and Hermione have that bonding moment over Hermione being heartbroken. Ron, like I said, and she gets so emotional, and I'm like, "Oh, Hermione, he sucks. Get over it." And then Harry's like, "It feels like this, like when he sees Ginny with Dean, because apparently he likes Ginny out of nowhere." So I like that scene. I love I actually really like. I know it's not the way it happens in the book. But I really like the Harry and Ginny in the room of requirement, their first kiss. I think that's really sweet. And again, see what I mean? Kind of quiet and like very character focused. And like it's just like a very understated scene. It's not very CG heavy. It's not very rushed. It's not very, you know what I mean? It's not. It's very kind of chill and like I said, meditative, and it's in the point that it's trying to make. I love that. I love the fact that Harry is like, I need to bring someone to this party, someone cool, and he thinks of possibly the most underrated character in these last few movies, fucking Luna Lovegood, who is so cool. I agree with Harry. She is super cool. I kind of would prefer Harry with Luna over Ginny, but Neville ends up with Luna, so that's cool too. I like Neville.
I forgot about that.
Neville's hot now. So in these movies, he was a kid. Now he's hot. So
there's also the author wanted Harry to more feel like 100% part of the Weasleys. So by marrying Jenny, he's not just his, Ron's best friend that kind of was adopted by the Weasleys. He's now their son-in-law, their son. So
right.
I think
he's officially a Weasley by marriage.
Because honestly, even in the books, I'm like, I don't get the big deal with Jenny. Like, I think that he just kind of came to fall in love with her as time was going on. He's like,
you look like Ron, my best friend, only with boobs. So sure. Pretty much. Is that what you think? You're like, I guess.
Well, actually, she's better than Ron, though.
I mean, she is better than Ron. She's braver than Ron. She's not less obnoxious than Ron. Romelda Vane is really pretty, too. But she has no bearing on the story other than she's the hot girl that's into Harry because she thinks he's the chosen one, which he is. So I wrote down magic, teens, and love. So I love I love that we're getting to all the romance stuff. But yeah, I'm really invested in the romance stuff. I like that. I'm a softie when that comes to that crap.
I want the creeping.
Yeah, you want
which is weird.
Which is weird because in other movies, you're like, I like the lighthearted things, and I'm like, yeah, the dark shit.
Actually,
and you're like,
I got to say though, like with the books, it's good that they. I wish, and I say this, I do wish I had spent more time on the memories, but like just as myself and knowing me, I'm like, I'm glad they didn't because he was freaking creepy in the books, and I don't want any more. He was creepy in the movies, just at the couple of memories they had where he's like, oh, tell me more for the Horcrux.
They kept the memories that are more plot, more relevant, more necessary to the rest of the story. The other stuff was background, but not needed to push the plot forward.
Remind me, and I'm gonna
remind you. I might not.
Yeah, you might
remember.
Well, you've seen these movies more than me.
Oh, okay,
but.
Fair. I thought it was gonna be a book thing. I was gonna be like, I don't remember.
I don't know if it's a book thing or a movie thing. Deathly Hallows doesn't talk about Defense Against Dark Arts, does it?
About how the position is cursed?
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Okay, it's all Half-Blood Prince, isn't it? Okay, yeah. So that's another important thing to note. Is that...
Well, it's also, they never, as I've mentioned on previous episodes, they never talk about the Marauders map. There's a lot of background stuff that they just like, not important.
But this is, I guess I feel like all the memories with Voldemort
no, you're not, you're not incorrect with that.
He's an evil person who fascinates me. So the whole thing in Half-Blood Prince of the book, one of the other memories was where Tom Riddle came to Dumbledore and he was like, and he was trying to go for the position of Defense of Dark Arts. At that point, he had murdered his grandfather. Okay, so he was already out of Hogwarts and was kind of going on his murdering adventures. And so he came back to Hogwarts to go.
Harry Potter, Tom Riddle and his murdering adventures would be like the companion piece to this.
Yeah. Wait for her to write it. And he goes to Hogwarts, and at this point, Professor Dumbledore is the headmaster, and he says, I want to vie for the Defense Against the Dark Arts position. And Dumbledore, being as clever as he is, he's like, I can't allow you to have this. And basically the whole thing with it is that position then became cursed because of
I remember
Tom
this
Riddle.
In the book now, yeah.
And that's why they were never able to find anybody. And Voldemort, I guess, wanted to be Defense Against the Dark Arts professor because...
He wanted to learn about the dark arts?
Yeah. And, and Dumbledore at that point was already up to speed on kind of the fact that Tom Riddle was a bad dude and clearly didn't want to give him that type of power. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of that further explains why this blasted... teaching role just can't ever seem to be filled consistently because Voldemort cursed it.
Right. Yeah, I remember that from the books, and it's an interesting bit of. I don't know how necessary it is to the plot of this movie, but it's a cool detail that they never really, like so many others, I don't think really ever found a place for. Again, it's been a while since I've watched either of the Deathly Hallows, so I'll have to. I'm sure you'll be sitting around when I watch those, so we'll have to verify that together.
Oh gosh, I don't want to have to watch the dancing scenes around the fire.
It's like one scene. Yeah, see, I feel like the seventh one. I just said earlier, I praised this movie for being like a little more reflective and like deliberate, even giving like those character beats and taking time for that and not just rushing through chapter by chapter. Like the first few movies, the first two especially, you could be like, and chapter 1, 5 minutes later, chapter 2, 5 minutes later, chapter 3. Like it doesn't have that episodic feeling. It feels more cohesive. But then I do agree with you. I feel like 7 is the one where they're like, all right, this is like slow now. Let's move, guys. Like it's just them hanging out in the camping outside for like parts of it. So I haven't seen those as nearly as much as the other ones. I am realizing as we're talking about this that this one feels like it introduces a lot. I feel like it expands the world a lot less than any of the other previous ones. You know what I mean? Like the pensive is in this one, which we've seen before. There's potions in this one. Yeah, there's different potions in this one than we've seen in the previous movies. There's liquid luck and then the whatever the love potion is, as opposed to Veritaserum, which is in the last one, and Polyjuice potion, which is in multiple previous ones, but it's just other potions. There's Sectum Sempra, which is the attacking spell from the Half-Blood Prince's book, things like that. But I feel like for the most part, minus the Horcruxes, which aren't really relevant until the next one.
Yeah.
This movie's just like, hey, more of that stuff you've seen. And also, look, they're all dating now. What? They don't really develop things as much. And maybe that's part of why some people felt this was a disappointment, because it's more focused on the characters and less on the world and less on developing forward. And in some ways, and now, when this came out, we were only a couple movies into this franchise, but it feels almost kind of Marvel-esque in that it feels like a setup movie for the next movie. You know how when you watch Age of Ultron, you're like, that was cool, but it feels like you brought all these characters in to do something interesting that they never got to do because you're saving them for the next movie, really? You know what I mean? And I feel like this is like I even referred to it when we were watching it as Deathly Hallows Part 0. It's basically like the prelude to the real, double part, 2-part finale of the franchise. And I feel like in large part, it's just kind of keying things up for that. I do, as we said, I do really love that the Horcruxes, how that the metaphor of that, the fact that it finally explains why Voldemort was a little ghost spirit thing in the first movie living on the back of some dude's head, and then later like a little tiny man baby that they threw in a bowl, and they had to do all this wacky dark magic to make him form into a noseless person. So I think all of that is really cool, and it's a really interesting idea. But again, this movie is just about uncovering that idea. This movie is just 2.5 hours of research into Horcruxes. That's what you wanted to know.
And don't forget, Ralph Fiennes wasn't even in this. Voldemort wasn't in this movie. And I forget that.
Yeah.
Because
this is the one that, you're right. There's the first one, Voldemort it's the back of Quirrell's head. Second one, he's a memory. So he's not really in it. Third one, he's not in at all. Like there's 0 Voldemort in the third movie. Fourth one, he's in at the very end for 10 minutes or whatever. And that great cemetery sequence that Freddie and I talked about. Fifth one, he shows up again at the very end of the movie. This one, he's not in at all. And you don't really see Voldemort from beginning to end in any of these movies until the last ones. Like, they really hold back on him until he, for maximum impact. And here we get, the most we get is flashback Voldemort. Like Chamber of Secrets. It's Chamber of Secrets Part 2. Kind of setting that up.
Yeah. But the scene, though, the scene, though, we need to talk about is the one in the cave. Because that was very,
I love it.
Very hard to watch.
I sort of mentioned tragic. It a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, very tragic. And it's like, and when you find out that it was Regulus's
fake, it was a bullshit.
They're going to get to more of that. RAB's locket.
He says that. He's like, it's not even real. It's fucking, all this is a waste.
It's like heartbreaking and it wasn't for nothing because Dumbledore obviously had a plan. Right. But
But this is what Harry says.
Yeah, but it's just like that's just so hard to watch. Harry having to do that to Dumbledore, somebody he loves, and it's like you said with your analogy that it's like a person that's suffering from Alzheimer's dementia.
You're tapping into my notes. Yeah, go for it.
That was, it's like, why are you treating me this way? And not realizing it's for their own good because,
And that it's what Dumbledore said for him to do. He's like, if I say run, you run. If I say leave me behind and save yourself, you do it. And he even says, if you have me drinking this, if I might beg for mercy, whatever, you keep me drinking this. And Harry's following his orders. But at that point, it's like, yeah, that's exactly what it is like. So I feel like someone watching this that has a family member in that situation, that might make them like tears stream down their face because that in that moment, because of the potion, and again, it's all magical metaphor, whatever. That's what makes sci-fi, fantasy, and horror so interesting is how you use fantastical supernatural elements to relate real life concepts to people without them, being like, this is boring or like getting defenses up or whatever. He doesn't know who Harry is. He's just like, why are you making me do this? Leave me alone. He even says, kill me, because he's like in agony. Like it's making him physically ill because he doesn't understand what's happening. He's so confused. He doesn't even know who he is in that moment. And it's really, like you said, it's really heart-wrenching to watch. And Michael Gambon, who had to step in the third movie after Richard Harris passed away, is so good in this role. I think the third one, he's in it less. And I think that's partially because of the way the book is, but that's also partially because they were easing into a new Dumbledore. He really comes into his own in this role over the last couple of movies, and I don't know.
Forget Richard Harris.
Yeah, you forget Richard Harris because Dumbledore just feels like an entirely different character because his performance style is so different. He's more of a, like, for lack of a better term, hippie. He's more like a free spirit. He embodies more of that whimsical nature that Dumbledore has in the books, I feel like, more so than in the first two movies. And Michael Gambon he sells it completely. And I think he is the key to why that sequence and his death scene really are so emotionally impactful, in the way that when I talked with Amy about Order of the Phoenix, I feel like Sirius Black's death scene was so quick and so abrupt, and I know it's meant that way, but for me it was so abrupt that I was like, oh, he's dead. Oh, okay. Like, it didn't even register. I didn't even feel like I had time to mourn, to be sad. I was just like, oh, that's it? That's his big death. Like, I knew that's his big death scene. That's it? He's done? Like, Dumbledore moment has that weight, with him having the conversation with Malfoy, with him telling Severus, please.
Which we don't realize what it's about.
Right, exactly. With the slow motion to fall off the tower, like, it's more dramatic. Everybody puts their wands in the air, kind of in tribute to him, and also to clear the dark mark over the castle. All of that stuff. It's good shit, man.
So I think that was a really powerful scene, and he definitely came into his own. But on a more author note, it's interesting that it's interesting that
Don't you say that name?
That she's been getting a lot of backlash lately on her thoughts on the trans community. When what part of the trivia that I was reading about with Half-Blood Prince is that it was during an interview it was during the making of, I think, this movie, where they're like, oh, and he has we want to talk about Dumbledore's
sexuality?
His sexuality. And she's like, no. Like, well,
she's like, what up? He gay, so.
Love lost, or whatever. She's like, Dumbledore's gay.
Yeah.
And he loves Grindelwald. And
she was very matter of fact about it. I remember.
And I'm like, okay, so this person who is so like, actually writes this character to be gay is so against the trans community. It's just
weird. It doesn't really feel like it.
Strange.
It feels like what happened? What happened to you, JK, over that decade or so? Like, who hurt you? Yeah. Like, how did that? Yeah, exactly.
It's very
I don't know.
strange.
It is.
It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, but yeah, it's a very powerful scene. So the question though is why? So Harry's feeding Dumbledore the potion. and then he finds a locket. So he couldn't just dipped his hands in the potion?
No, it wouldn't let him.
Oh.
Because it's magic, Kai. That's your answer to everything is it's magic.
Right, of course. Okay.
That's the spell was it's to prevent that from happening. I also want to point out that the score in this movie is great, particularly in that sequence that you're talking about. By Nicholas Hooper did the score in this one. I think he did Order of the Phoenix as well. I really love. I used to listen to the score to these movies quite a bit, and I feel like now that we just watched this, I'm gonna have to bust that one out again because we do it's In Fury in the Firestorm is the track. It's only like 2 minutes, but that when Dumbledore snaps out of it and rescues Harry and conjures the firestorm and is clearing out the In Fury, I think are those are the zombie creature things that are climbing up, I believe. I'm not sure. But I love that. The music is great. He says, in the whole thing that he prefaces it with, once again, I must ask too much of you, Harry. I'm like, Jesus, dude, leave this kid alone. He just wants to date Ginny Weasley and live his life. A couple more things I wanted to point out. I do feel like generally, even though this movie has, up to this point, one of the more tragic endings, probably this and then Cedric's death, which, again, I forgot to mention this on the Goblet of Fire episode with Freddie, but Cedric's father, I forget his first name, Mr. Diggory, let's call him, coming out and being like, that's my son, that's my boy. Like, I forgot to bring that moment up because especially now being a parent myself, that used to make me cry when I was in my 20s and watching that. But even now, especially being a father also, that's very powerful and emotional. And I feel like this is one of the other like most tragic endings because of Dumbledore's death up to this point, but it's also the movie is weirdly one of the most lighthearted ones like in the last couple, like since Dumbledore came Voldemort. Why can't I keep getting Dumbledore and Voldemort mixed up? When Voldemort comes back, and it's also one of the more self-aware because I feel like at this point, and this is something that, and you people will hear my conversation on Saw in a couple weeks. Or next week after this episode airs, posted. I know it's been a while. Just like Saw 6 becomes like we have to just like it embraces sort of a like very macabre sense of humor that's not in the previous ones because I think they're just like, well, shit, we're on the 6th one. We got to mix it up and add a new element here. At this point, this is the one where Dumbledore at the beginning is like, hey, by now you must be wondering why I brought you here, Harry. And Harry's like, dude, I don't know. I just roll with it because this is my 6th movie. So when you say do this, I'm like, sure. And then the three main kids are brought in front of McGonagall. And she's like, why is it always you three? Or like Hermione is like, I was looking over there, and then they're like the library, and they're like, yeah, of course, that's what she does. And like, this is the most self-aware of the Harry Potter. This is where the Harry Potter movies are like, we know you're watching a Harry Potter movie. We're getting to the end. Hang in there. Let's just acknowledge the fact that we've all lived through several of these movies. So we're getting there. We're winding it down. Don't get off our ass. So I think that was interesting. What do you want to say? Something I can tell.
Well, we were talking about the tower. To Dumbledore's death. So the fact that Snape now killed Dumbledore, whether or not we have his motives,
right?
Wouldn't that mean that his soul now has split into two?
I think I'm not sure. I'm not the kind of person that has murdered people, nor
that's good to know.
Created Horcruxes based on that. But I feel like there is some kind of spell or dark magic element that has to go into play in tandem with that act to do that. Because like otherwise, like what you said, there'd be Snape would have. Snape is a reformed Death Eater, so presumably he's done bad things before in service of the Dark Lord.
He's the only one. I feel like he's the only one that calls him that. Right?
Dark Lord. Oh, R.I.P. Alan Rickman, by the way, who is great in this movie, and weirdly, like I said, the second title character, but also not in it as much as you would think based on that. I think maybe because they're trying to just like keep it close to the chest. But like I said earlier with Maggie Smith, a little Alan Rickman goes a long way. I also wanted to point out a couple other questions that I had for you. One, do you feel like there was enough focus on the actual textbook that was the Half-Blood Princes in this movie? Because I feel like when he does the Sanctum Sempra on Snape, he's like, he trusted you. or whatever, and he deflects it. He's like, use my own spells against me. That's right, I am the Half-Blood Prince. I feel like the movie hasn't brought that book up in like an hour, and people watching this movie that aren't like hardcore Potterheads or like really into these films would be like, oh yeah, that book that he had that I forgot about because I don't care. Because I'm more focused on who Ron is dating or whatever.
It's a really good point. Yeah.
Again, it goes back to the balance being off.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that in the book it was referenced more.
Yeah.
And had more, just like when that announcement happened, it was stronger.
Right. This is the second, again, to go back to my earlier reference, this is the second of 6 Harry Potter movies to hinge on the fact that Harry Potter finds a mysterious book that once belonged to someone maybe bad. And that movie does a better job threading the Tom Riddle's diary thing throughout the course of the film than this one does. Like the diary, the textbook is key until it's not anymore. You know, he hides it and then they don't bring it up. And I feel like enough stuff happens that you might forget that that's even in play at that point. Because you got the Malfoy things, you got all the romantic stuff, you got Dumbledore and their little side quest. I feel like there's a lot of other things going on.
And Malfoy doesn't go to class anymore, right?
Apparently not.
So what the hell does he do?
He's mending that vanishing cabinet.
And what did he do to mend the vanishing cabinet? Because all I saw him
magical stuff. I don't know. All I saw him
do was
magic
put
stuff.
Birds in there,
and then die or an apple takes a bite.
Yeah, but like.
But I love the fact this is again because every one of these stories takes place over the course of an entire school year. I feel like the big question at the end of it is, did this shit really need to take 9 months? Like, couldn't you just be like, here's
my job. I wouldn't have a job.
Here's a can of Coke. Oh, Harry Potter touched it. It's a port key, and it brings him to the graveyard. Like, why did it have to be? We got to get him. We got to slip his name into the cup, right? You with me? Then he has to survive all the tasks. Then the trophy at the end that we'll cross our fingers and hope that Harry Potter touches will bring him to the graveyard because we need his blood to bring Voldemort. Like, that seems like really overly convoluted.
These people are very patient.
But yes, well, yeah. But every step of their plan takes like a year. But I like the fact that in this one they just said, "All right, Draco, at some point this year you got to kill Dumbledore." Jesus. You got to kill Dumbledore. And he's like, all right, cool, I got you. And the reason it takes him a year is because he's just really shitty at his job that he does because he doesn't really want to murder someone. He's like, what if I kind of murder someone and I drop this here and then oops, that thing ends up causing someone else to die, but it's not on me because I didn't deliver it myself, even though it's kind of indirect murder. So I love that's the explanation is that Malfoy's like, nah, I don't want to do that.
Well, so I am curious, though, because this wasn't really made clear in the books. It wasn't made clear in the movies. But to go back to Snape and how he's like a reformed Dark Lord, and then you have in the earlier sequence of the movie that Draco's mom, Narissa, comes to Snape and
Narcissa.
Is like, oh, yeah, I got to make this unbreakable vow with you. I kind of also feel like that came out of nowhere, that Snape was so close to Voldemort, for Voldemort to even tell him this. It kind of comes out of left field.
That Voldemort trusts Snape so much?
Yeah, they didn't make that clear anywhere.
I think Voldemort thinks that Snape is an undercover person with Dumbledore and vice versa. I don't know what Snape did to prove his loyalty to Voldemort at that point, but
it doesn't make sense to me. I never really got that. I don't get it. Like they didn't build, that wasn't ever really built up, and they talk about how he's a reformed Death Eater, but they don't talk about why he has such a close relationship with Voldemort, even more than Bellatrix Lestrange, that Voldemort's telling him these things. But are you saying that Voldemort's telling him these things because he is relying on the fact that he's a double agent?
I think so.
Yeah? Maybe
Snape must have fed Voldemort information on Dumbledore. And that's how he's able to earn his trust. I mean, and obviously Dumbledore is complicit enough in the plan that he's like, yeah, you're going to have to kill me. I'm just sorry, that's just how it goes. And he's like, I don't want to kill you. You're my friend. He's like, nope, too bad. Sorry, you got to do that.
Yeah, Dumbledore doesn't really fight for his life, does he?
No, that's his thing. He's willing to lay his life on the line He kind of considers himself a soldier in this story. Basically, he's a means to an end. And like they say, they joke in the movie about him being 150, but he is supposed to be older than a normal person at this point, because he's, that's how the wizarding world works. We didn't really mention
being facetious.
Yeah, I think they were, but I also think he's supposed to be older than like the 70 years old or 60 something that Michael Gambon is when they recorded.
They're still human though.
Because in the 30s,
they're still human.
Yes,
they're magic,
yes,
they're still human.
In the 30s, in what are 40s or whenever the Fantastic Beasts sequel, Crimes of Grindelwald, is set, Jude Law, who's like 50, is playing him. So do your math. Harry Potter is set like 60 years later, 50, 60, 60. So clearly he's supposed to be 100 and something.
What exuberance.
I know. He's more energetic than we are. We're in our 30s. I wanted to point out also the Chamber of Secrets thing. Aragog, his death is kind of a sequence in this. Again, back to that. And we didn't talk about how Daniel Radcliffe apparently was
I don't want to sound heartless here because I do like animals, but I kind of feel like if you're going to not even include some other memories for Tom Riddle and some other things that were going on in the book, why are you including the death of the spider?
I see it as a sort of a passage of time thing. Been like, look, this is what we've been telling these stories so long. That spider that was like kicking ass and the focus of an entire action sequence 4 movies ago, he dead. It's like the world has become such a dark place that characters you knew earlier in the movies are piecing out. I mean, as we'll see with Dobby in the next one. We didn't mention that Daniel Radcliffe was apparently drunk a lot on the set of this movie.
We definitely noticed it once we knew that.
Yeah, when you see a certain thing, even that scene where he's on Liquid Luck, he seems like and the pincers, and you're like, whoa, dude, the homeboy's out of it. What else? So, the attack on the burrows is not in the book. It happens differently in the book somehow. I forget exactly how that goes down, but that sequence is not in there. And there's supposed to be a scene in the burrows, either in this one or the next book, that isn't in there because it burned down. What are your thoughts on that change? The fact that they wanted to add a little more personal stakes and have a little. I think what it is in the book they reference the Death Eaters attacking wizards, wizarding families, and things like that. But it wasn't really seen. But it wasn't really like impacting the characters directly. And so in order for that point to make a greater impact, they changed it to the Weasleys' iconic home being destroyed. Are you cool with that change? As a person representing the books?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. It doesn't really...
They don't really do a whole lot. They run in a field and they're like, we're going to get you. And they're like, haha, no, you won't. And they disapparate.
So
basically.
What the hell? So it's also like, why are these kids continually fighting the Death Eaters? Like,
because that's how it works.
Why was Molly and I don't remember the name of the
Molly
guy.
was in Arthur Weasley, the dad.
Why are they just standing there watching their house
Arthur
burn?
was running after them. Molly was in the house.
Why couldn't they have fought back too? Like to protect their home and their family. Like it shouldn't be these kids that are constantly in these dangerous situations all the time.
Why is it always you three? Exactly.
Yeah, they're always in these dangerous situations. And they kick more ass than these adults are. And then Molly's like, I don't want Harry to be in the Order of Phoenix. I'm like, why? He's kicking more ass than you are, Molly. And and don't get me wrong. I mean,
Molly's a badass.
Molly Weasley is awesome. She's gonna have her moment.
Yeah, she is.
In the 8th movie, but it's just like she's just standing there watching her house burn. I'm like, lady, you should be. Why were you? What the hell was going on? Or why that he was even?
She was in the house, like doing dishes or something. I don't know. She was just like running the household. I don't know. Escaped. Yeah, exactly. That would have been sad. But yeah, so the burrows burning down was a big change to the movie from the book that a lot of people sort of latched on to as part of like, this movie doesn't even understand the book at all, man. But I think we've established the balance is off clearly. So there's one more thing that I wanted to talk about, and then we can sort of end it here because we're way over time. But we have 9 years of history never shutting up when we talk to each other, so people get to experience a little bit of that. The big change here is at the end of the book, they come back, Dumbledore is all wiped, and Draco comes over being like, I'm gonna kill you now, I'm really gonna do it this time, I'm serious. And he's like, Avada, I'm getting there. And then Snape shows up, and Dumbledore has told Harry to stay under there to be quiet. and not interfere whatsoever, right?
Right.
Because, you know, he knows that Snape is on the way, blah, 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 whatever. In the book, I forget exactly what the situation is, but I think Dumbledore maybe even puts a spell so that Harry is not able to do anything or something. In whatever reason, Harry, because of magic, Harry is not able to move in that scene. He's literally stuck there to watch this happen. In the movie, that's not a factor.
Right.
He just listens to Dumbledore. Do you think good or bad change, and why?
That's an interesting question. I think it's more a style change in that instance.
Mm-hmm. If you don't have a particular strong feelings one either way, I can weigh in.
I guess I could see that if it's in the movie and he has the ability to move around, why there's more of that guilt.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus like in the book, you know, I don't remember if he felt as much guilt because he literally couldn't do anything. So I think it's just a style change.
Yeah, it adds an extra.
I'm fine with it either way.
It adds an extra wrinkle of character dimension if Harry now feels more weight of that, you know, of, like you said, of the guilt of I should have done something. He said not to, but I should have interfered to save his life or whatever. Then maybe I could have stopped him. And I think it's a little thing, but I think it has a big character effect. So maybe it only strengthens your understanding why he would be like, nope, I got to finish what Dumbledore started. I could have saved him. I didn't. Now I'm not coming back to school because I got shit to do. I gotta take out the rest of this Horcruxes.
And I wonder with the whole thing with Dumbledore and Snape is that if Draco would have done it, if Snape hadn't done it.
Well, that's what Hermione asks.
If Draco even knew about the unbreakable vow.
I think he does, because that's the conversation that Harry overhears. I believe is like, I have to back you up. Don't worry, you're all good.
Like it's also one of those things like a child feeling like they're being undermined by an adult and being like, hey man, I was gonna do that, and you don't, especially since he has such a need for validation. Being like, hey fucker, you took me. You took over.
Is that your first F-bomb?
Yeah, I think so.
Because I've done like 6, so I have to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we also see Fawkes the Phoenix after Dumbledore's death, which are secrets theory or whatever. So I like that, just seeing Fawkes again. So last question, and then we're gonna say goodbye. Finally. Based on this movie, not knowing what you know of the next movie, not knowing what you know of the books, do you think Snape is good or evil? Because that was the question the people that read the book were left with and then had to wait until the Deathly Hallows novel came out.
I think that he is a human being, that he is good and bad. Because we're all good and bad.
But do you think that do you think he's on Voldemort's side? According to the movie, not knowing the book and not with the next movie.
No, I don't think he's on Voldemort's side. You
think it's still in question?
Yeah, I think that they kind of explain, it explains a little bit his relationship with Dumbledore when he's like, you can't keep expecting me.
But that's a quick enough moment that it's easy for people to probably overlook and be like, oh, he killed Dumbledore. Because if you're looking for in the list form, pros and cons list of is he good or evil, murder Dumbledore is a pretty good, pro-evil side. So I think I like the position that it puts his character in, and that's a question that readers and or viewers are wondering going into the next one. And
they also definitely put in position of when Dumbledore says to Snape, please, you as a viewer think he's saying, please don't kill me, man. Don't kill me, when in reality you find out in the next movie he's saying, please, do this.
So you're saying the movie does a good job leaving it open-ended where you're like, is he? I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
Because you never understand until almost the end of the last movie what his motivation is, because he's very confusing. He'll seem like, I hate you, Harry Potter. Go F off. And then he'll be like, oh, Harry Potter, I gotta protect you. And then you don't understand why until the last one, which that one of the best sequences in the whole saga.
Ultimately, though, Snape was the most realistic with Harry Potter that nobody else was. Like, he didn't look at Harry Potter as the chosen one, and he's just like, yeah, you think you are the chosen one, and you're arrogant.
Like, your father was an asshole.
Yeah. So he's like,
and you got a little of that in Order of the Phoenix. You got a little of his dad. You find out in the last movie, the previous movie, that James Potter bullied him a lot and was not the paragon of virtue that Harry seems to think his dad was.
Right. So it's like, So Snape was always keeping it real, you know. He's like, you're not
keeping it real.
You're not the best thing, Harry, but he's also like,
Right.
and because of that, he also is, you know, he's not
Yeah.
evil. He's not evil. He's not good. A balance of the both of them.
Yeah, cool. Interesting movie, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's a lot. I mean, we talked. This is going to be one of the longer episodes for this series, so
I expect nothing less.
yeah, of course. Well, you and I have a tendency to go off on tangents. Anywhere people want to find you on social media? I guess Instagram. You're not doing Twitter ever, really, but Instagram. You want to tell people where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on
Yaniz?
Instagram at KELAN373, and then you can also find me on Facebook. But yeah, I'm not really.
But you're not. You can't find you on Facebook because you're private. Is really on there.
Okay, give me my Instagram.
Instagram, yeah, go back to that. Well, thank you, Kai Yaniz, for being on the show once again. We talked about doing a Down with Love episode at some point, so maybe we'll still do that. But if nothing else, I said in my Instagram live video, and I'm going to hold you to it here, we're going to try and do quick commentaries once a month starting in January 2021. So that will be interesting. So we'll have to figure out what we want to do. But in the meantime, thank you, Kai, for talking about Harry Potter with me for 2 hours. And thank you, listener. And we'll be back with another episode next week.
All right, bye.
If you're interested in joining me on the show to chat about one of your favorite films, head on over to crookedtable.com/guest. Or you can consider supporting the show at patreon.com/crookedtable. Of course, you can always find more podcasts, reviews, videos, and other movie-related goodies over at crookedtable.com. Until next time, this has been the Crooked Table Podcast, and I've been Rob.
This has been a production of crookedtable.com. All rights reserved.
CROOKED.